to the NBA, and we're going to do a little game of fact and fiction with Legs. Legs, Celtics in trouble against Miami. Is that fact or fiction?
I'm going to say fiction. One game is not trouble. One game should be smelling salts for the Boston Celtics. That's really all it should be. You got our attention. Clearly the better team, more complete, more versatile. They've got to send a message in Game 3, though. If they don't go down to Miami and immediately flip this script and win Game 3, now you're going to see potentially a 7-game series with a lot of drama. But so far, I can't say it's trouble after just one performance.
Let's go out west. LeBron, Lakers, will they be swept by Denver? Is that fact or fiction?
I'm going to say fiction for this reason. I have too much respect for LeBron James and Anthony Davis and the way that they are playing right now. You think about what happened in Game 2. They controlled that game for 85% of the game. They just could not close, and they ran into a team that's a buzzsaw in clutch time situations. But the Lakers controlled the game, and they really got to their spots, ran their offense the way they needed to. I expect the Lakers changing venues to get at least one game at home.
I know you heard Joel Embiid. Embiid and the Sixers can still win the series against the Knicks. Is that fact or fiction?
I got to say fiction, the way Embiid looks. It really comes down to that. I mean, I can't deny what I'm seeing. He just does not have the defensive mobility. He's not a presence on the glass to the extent that he needs to be, and he's a one-dimensional offensive player now, basically living on the perimeter because he's got no lift in the paint. When you look at Joel Embiid being maybe 60, 70% at max of what he is capable of, I just don't know how the Sixers overcome that, particularly when some of their role players have just not inserted themselves into this series at all to this point.
Well, you talked about the big men. Look at this. Joel Embiid hasn't been really himself in the playoffs, especially once the fourth quarter starts. In both games combined, Embiid just 11 fourth quarter points, and he has yet to record a rebound. 52 of Embiid's 63 total points in this series have come in the first 3 quarters. So can Philly overcome Joel Embiid, you think, obvious limitations and win games 4?
Look, it's not out of the question because I think the Knicks are uncertain in a lot of ways, right? Their offense is a little bit sporadic. You don't know exactly where it's coming from, and Jalen Brunson hasn't found his rhythm yet.
It's been Josh Hart.
Absolutely. So can the Sixers do it? Yes, but when I look at Joel Embiid, I just don't know how you operate your offense the way you did all season when he's relegated to the way he looks in the second halves of these games. Now, look, he had an extra day off. Does that make him look better at the start of the game? Potentially. He might come out and be dominant in the first quarter, but as the game goes on, that is when we have seen Joel Embiid, you know, the look on his face, the stiffness in the leg, the way he's changing ends of the floor. He's just not the same player, and he occupies really one area of the floor on the other end. Now, look, it's going to take this. Kelly Oubre, Buddy Hield, Nicholas Batum, Kyle Lowry. Those are the guys that are going to have to step up and really give them a boost, and that just hasn't been the case so far in the first 2 games. I think I'm pretty confident what Maxi's going to look like. He is a legitimate star. Embiid's health is the single biggest question mark in this series. So can they do it? Yes. Is it likely? No, not the way he looks.
Yeah, you went and got Buddy Hield for shooting. You haven't seen it yet. Tobias Harris, you'd like to see him step up as well. Finish this sentence then for me. Philly will win Game 3 if
they can continue to – if Philly or the Knicks?
Philly.
Philadelphia will win this series if they get some help from their supporting cast and Jalen Brunson struggles again. I don't think the Knicks are going to win a 3rd straight game with Jalen Brunson shooting the basketball like this. And look, the Sixers have a lot to do with it. The length they have put on him has clearly bothered him. They're doing a great job of trailing him from behind and getting over the top with contests, and I think it's affecting him. He's getting to his spots, but these aren't clean looks. If he struggles again in Game 3, Sixers are going to win the game. Question is, do you expect Jalen Brunson in the year he's had to do that 3 straight games? That's a big one. And then the Sixers have to get some help from the guy.
Last night, Heat, Celtics, Jason Tatum, the C's, Tyler Hero, the Heat, Game 2. Celtics up 1-0. We picked this game up in the first quarter, and it was the C's rolling. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, back and forth. Hey, Tatum had 28 in this game, Legs.
Yeah, you know, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, for the most part, had pretty good numbers. But it wasn't the Celtics-style game, even though Jaylen Brown had this run at the end of the half.
No Jimmy Butler. Heat needed a hero. They got one in Tyler Hero. Boy, he led the Heat on a 10-0 run, 14 dimes in this one.
Not a traditional point guard. He's a combo guard, but he played like a true point guard in this game, organized their offense, gave them scoring, but more importantly, assisted and facilitated their offense.
He certainly set the table just like this. Jaime Jaquez for 3. He had 14 in the starting lineup.
It was everybody. I felt like checking in the game with all these threes flying. They made 23 of them, Everybody on their roster, it felt like knocked down open shots when they had an opportunity.
Caleb Martin knocks down. Then Tyler Hero does it himself. He had 23, 14 assists. He leads them to a victory, 111-101. So now that this series is all tied up at one game apiece, your biggest takeaway when you see how the Heat took game 2 in Boston?
First of all the credit in the world to Eric Spoelstra for getting this team mentally ready to believe first. You know, you're talking about playing the 1 seed that won 64 games. You also don't have Jimmy Butler. You go in there down 0-1. You got blasted in the first game, and you come out with this level of belief and certainty the way you operated offensively. I just thought it was an outrageous shooting performance. That's really what it comes down to. Guys ready to toe up shots and knock them down. Now, I do think Boston contributed to it. I think they had an overreaction to penetration, and then the closeouts were too long. You're going to see an adjustment in game 3. We're going to stay a little bit closer to those shooters and force guys to score in the paint. I think Miami could have a problem doing that. And I think Boston was a little bit too ISO heavy offensively, so they contributed to it. But I'm going to give most of the credit in this to the Heat. It's just more about what they did, I think, than what the Celtics didn't do.
I think sometimes we underestimate how good of a coach Eric Spoelstra is. You talk about one of the best there. So based off of that, was that a bad sign, bad game, you think, for the season?
I think it's, well, listen, we're going to find out. I think you can only answer that question in the context of what happens next. Because if you are the real deal, you're going to turn this around and go right into Miami and win game 3 before any real vulnerability starts to set in and doubt starts to set in. You won 64 games. You had a 14-game lead on the rest of the conference. You're playing an 8 seed. If you're the Boston Celtics, look, things like this can happen in the series, particularly with a team and an organization with this kind of pride and a coach like Eric Spoelstra. But you've got to turn right back around and flip the script when you go into Miami. You go down 2-1. This thing could linger into a 7-game series, and I think a lot of doubt starts to set in internally. Let's see what their response is. That will be a better answer to the question you just asked me.
Biggest adjustment then for the Celtics.
Couple things. I think first of all, they've got to get out of the ISO heavy basketball. That's not them at their best. They're best when they get downhill on dribble drive, they kick it, they make you chase it, and they've got so much three-point shooting. This is the most prolific three-point shooting team in the league in terms of attempts and makes. That wasn't their game in game 2. This was Miami really doing it to them. So I think get away from the ISOs, and I think you've got to do something with Kristaps Porzingis to take advantage of these switches. He was a complete non-factor in this game. Reason you go out and get Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis is for the playoff stretch, right? Because you've got too much versatility. Neither of those guys really had any impact in this game offensively, but particularly Porzingis. If the Heat are going to switch all these ball screens, you've got to take advantage of that by getting into the mid-post and making them pay for playing smaller guys on it.
All right, we'll see if they make those kind of changes. We'll talk a little bit more about the NBA playoffs as well.